Now, the greatest radio shows of all time.
Suspense.
The Shadow Node.
Washington calling David Harding, Counter Spy.
Classic radio theater.
The Great Gildersleeve.
Fibber McGee and Molly.
Dragnet. Gunsmoke.
The Lone Ranger.
Now, step back into a time machine with your host, Wyatt Cox.
Good evening, friends of the Inner Sanctum.
Eve Arden starring as our Miss Brooks in an episode from 73 years ago. This was on May 21st, 1950. Mr. Conklin's Rare Black Orchid. We thank you for joining us on this Sunday. This is the 21st day of May, 141st day of the year, 224 days remaining till we get to 2024. Slavery abolished in Colombia, South America on this date in 1851. In 1856, Lawrence, Kansas, captured and burned to the ground by pro-slavery forces. American Red Cross established by Clara Barton on this date in 1881. In 1917, the Great Atlanta Fire began just after noon on Monday, May 21st, finally extinguished by 10 o'clock that night. 300 acres, much of the Fourth Ward, including nearly 2,000 homes, businesses, and churches, 10,000 people displaced. Charles Lindbergh touched down at Le Bourget Field in Paris on this date in 1927, completing the world's first solo nonstop flight across the Atlantic. It was 1932. Amelia Earhart, because of bad weather, landed in a pasture in Derry, Northern Ireland, becoming the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic Ocean.
Flying is perhaps the most dramatic of recent scientific attainments. In the brief span of 30-odd years, the world has seen an inventor's dream, first materialized by the Wright brothers at Kitty Hawk, become an everyday actuality. Perhaps I'm prejudiced, but to me it seems that no other phase of modern progress contrives to maintain such a brimming measure of romance and beauty coupled with utility as does aviation.
An excerpt from a 1935 broadcast, A Woman's Place in Science. She would disappear during a flight over the Pacific in 1937 and was declared dead in 1939. 1934, Oskaloosa, Iowa became the first municipality in the U.S. to fingerprint each of its citizens. 1941, 950 miles off the coast of Brazil, the freighter SS Robin Moore became the first U.S. ship sunk by a German U-boat, and that was before the U.S. officially entered the war. 1945, screen legend Humphrey Bogart married actress Lauren Bacall.
Tell me, what do you usually do when you're not working?
Play the horses, fool around.
No women?
Well, I'm generally working on something most of the time.
Could that be stretched to include me?
Well, I like you. I told you that before.
I like hearing you say it. But you didn't do much about it.
Well, neither did you.
Well, speaking of horses, I like to play them myself. But I like to see them work out a little first. See if they're front runners or come from behind. Find out what their whole card is. What makes them run.
An excerpt from their 1946 motion picture, The Big Sleep. 1961, American Civil Rights Movement, Alabama Governor John Malcolm Patterson declared martial law in an attempt to restore order after race riots broke out. 1979, the White Night riots in San Francisco following the manslaughter conviction of Dan White for the assassination of George Moscone and Harvey Milk. After 30 seasons, Johnny Carson hosted his penultimate episode and last show featuring guests on this date in 1992, Robin Williams and Bette Midler, The Tonight Show. Wrapping it up, there would be one more show, but it would be Carson by himself. 2005, the tallest roller coaster in the world, Kingda Ka, opened at Six Flags Great Adventure in Jackson Township, New Jersey. 2011, radio broadcaster Harold Camping predicted the world would end on this date back in 2011. He would pass away 2 years later, in December of 2013. Passing away on this date in history, the fine musician Vaughn Monroe, Sammy Davis Sr., the father of Sammy Davis Jr., actor Lash LaRue, Sir John Gielgud, another fine actor, and Ernest T. Bass on The Andy Griffith Show, Howard Morse. This is the birth date of aviation pioneer Glenn Curtiss, physician Armand Hammer, band leader Horace Height, film producer Sam Jaffe, actor Robert Montgomery, pianist Fats Waller, novelist Harold Robbins, Raymond Burr, Andrei Sakharov, Peggy Cass, and Dennis Day.
Look, Dennis, you're getting $35 a week, aren't you?
Yes, but I've got a cousin who makes $40 a week, and he's a shoe salesman.
All right, your cousin makes $40, and he's a shoe salesman. That means he has to work every day in the week for it. Now, you don't work Monday, do you?
No.
You don't work Tuesday?
No.
You don't work Thursday?
You forgot Wednesday.
Yeah, Wednesday.
No.
Now, look, you don't work Friday and you don't work Saturday. The whole week is almost over, and you haven't worked yet.
Gee, I'm a bum.
Dennis Day, born on this date in history. Ronald Isley of the Isley Brothers, 82 today. The lady who sang about Bobby's Girl, I Want to Be Bobby's Girl, Marcy Blaine, 79 today. The man who sang about More Than I Can Say, When I Need You and You Make Me Feel Like Dancing, Leo Sayer, 75 today. Also, Mr. T still pities the fool at 71. From Fast Times in Ridgemont High, Gremlins, Judge Reinhold, 66. The son of John Cassavetes and Gina Rowlands, Nick Cassavetes, is 64 today. From House, Lisa Edelstein is 57. From Return to Oz, The Craft, and Amazon's Paradise City, Fairuza Balk is 49. Gautier, the singer who sang about Someone That I Used to Know, #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, 43 years old today. And one of the first internet viral videos, Chocolate Rain, Tay Zonday, 41 years old today. Those just a few of the people celebrating the 21st day of May as their birthday. If this happens to be your birthday...
Hi, we're the 4 freshmen, and we just want to say... Happy birthday to you.
And we go back 73 years, May 21st, 1950. Our Miss Brooks starring Eve Arden. That's up next on this Sunday Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox on your favorite radio station. A quick trivia question for you. What relation does the television show The Rebel have with Our Miss Brooks? I'll tell you about that in a few minutes. Our Miss Brooks was on television for 4 seasons. It was on radio for 9, and they did do a motion picture in 1956, which discarded much of the what had gone on in the television and in the radio series, and basically went in a whole new direction. All that information is there. The one change that probably did not help the show was when the Philip Boynton, Jeff Chandler on radio did not do as well, and he left the show, went on to other motion pictures and other projects. Robert Rockwell took over on radio and television and in the motion picture. Took the role of Mr. Boynton. And that affected the ratings and accepted the way people were. Jeff Chandler, a much different performer than Robert Rockwell. I'm not saying better, just different. Alrighty, we'll get back to some more on Our Miss Brooks. But first, let us have some of the show. That's what you came here for on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. 73 years ago, May 21st, 1950, Eve Arden as Our Miss Brooks.
Colgate Dental Cream to clean your breath while you clean your teeth and help stop tooth decay, and Luster Cream Shampoo for soft, glamorous, caressable hair bring you Our Miss Brooks, starring Eve Arden. It's time once again for another comedy episode of Our Miss Brooks under the direction of Al Lewis. Well, this is National Pickle Week, and among others who celebrated the occasion was Our Miss Brooks, who teaches English at Madison High School.
I celebrated National Pickle Week, all right, by getting myself into the prettiest pickle you've ever seen. It all started innocently enough when my landlady and I sat down to breakfast last Thursday morning.
There's your cereal, Connie. Now tell me, dear, have you made any plans for your vacation next month?
Nothing definite, Mrs. Davis.
Perhaps it's just as well not to plan too far in advance. Who knows what summer may bring? You might even elope. Have you ever thought of that, Connie?
Many times, Mrs. Davis. I'd do it in a minute, too. If it weren't for a stubborn little streak in me, which keeps insisting that it's no fun to elope by yourself.
I didn't mean by yourself, Connie. What's wrong with Mr. Boynton?
For submitting the outstanding question of the week, we are sending Mrs. Margaret Davis a lifetime supply of Dutch boy paint. I wish I knew what was wrong with Mr. Boynton. All he talks about lately is his impending vacation in South America.
South America? What a wonderful idea. And it simplifies everything.
It does?
Of course. If Mr. Boynton is going to South America, that's where you have to go.
The thought has occurred to me, Mrs. Davis, but there's one thing that stands in the way. Transportation.
Transportation?
Yes, one of my water wings has a blowout.
Don't be discouraged by your present financial state, Connie. I'll go make some tea and read your tea leaves in a little while. Maybe there'll be some good news in your cup. Why, at this very moment, Lady Luck may be camping on your doorstep.
Well, don't sit there, lady. Come on in.
Greetings, most gracious and scintillating educator.
Thank you, most generous and observant pupil. Sit down, Walter, and have some toast and jelly.
Oh, thanks.
What kind of a plant is that you're holding?
It's a rare black orchid, Miss Brooks. Here.
An orchid? Must have cost you quite a bit of money, Walter.
Pish tush! The blossom cost me nothing. Besides, this is no time to concern ourselves with petty monetary considerations. I'm going to be rich, Miss Brooks. Wealthy beyond all dreams of avarice. The fabulous treasures of the universe are within my grasp.
Say, buddy, could you spare a round-trip ticket to South America?
No, I'm serious, Miss Brooks. I've discovered uranium.
Uranium? Where?
On my shoe.
Who's your boot black?
It's no joke, Miss Brooks. I made the discovery in the chem lab. We got a brand new Geiger counter, and it's... by the way, have you ever used a Geiger counter?
I haven't had to, Walter. Very few of my pupils are named Geiger.
No. I'm afraid you don't understand. A Geiger counter is an instrument that measures the number and intensity of emanations from radioactive substances.
Sounds terribly talented. But how did you get mixed up with it?
Well, I climbed on a desk to fix a light bulb, and my shoe got near the Geiger counter. You should have heard it. It almost blew its top. That means uranium's on my shoe. Now, the way I figure it, all I've got to do is retrace my steps of the past few days.
Wouldn't it be easier to just start mining your shoe?
Please, Miss Brooks. No, you gotta help me. You see, the counter is school property and can't be removed from the building without Mr. Conklin's permission. But if a teacher were to ask
Oh,
him...
not me, Walter. I'd like to assist you in this project, but now is the wrong time. Tuesday, I knocked a bowl of soup into his lap in the cafeteria, and last week I dropped a typewriter on his foot.
Oh.
Say, it's almost 8:15. I better park this orchid in the icebox and get ready to leave. Have a glass of milk, Walter. I'll just be a minute.
Okay, Miss Brooks.
Oh, it's you, Connie. The tea is almost ready.
I'm afraid I won't have time for the reading, Mrs. Davis. I just want to put this in the icebox.
My, what a lovely stalk of asparagus.
Don't let Walter Denton hear you say that. This happens to be a black orchid.
Oh, but you shouldn't put that in the icebox, Connie. It won't do anybody any good there. Why don't you take it down to school with you and give it to Mr. Conklin?
Mr. Conklin?
Yes. You told me yourself you've been naughty lately. Maybe this little gift would make up for your recent habit of dropping things on him.
Say, it might at that. Although I wouldn't want Walter to find out that I gave away his present.
Walter wouldn't mind. Besides, he won't know anything about it. I'll just put the flower into this box that the clean laundry came in, tie it with this red ribbon, and presto, you've got a peace offering for your principal.
Thanks, Mrs. Davis. I'm sure nothing could make him happier unless I was tied up in the box.
gosh, Miss Brooks, I wish you'd reconsider my proposition about that Geiger counter. If you'll just get us permission to use it, I'll make you a 50-50 partner in whatever we find.
It's a more than liberal offer, Walter, but I'm afraid I can't take advantage of it. Right now, I'm trying to figure a good method of stowing away to South America.
Well, all right, Miss Brooks, but I hate the thought of passing up a possible bonus of $10,000 offered for discoveries of uranium.
I know, Walter, and I can't say that it's altogether impossible, but as far as the immediate future is concerned, did you say $10,000?
That's right. And if it's a big field, we might even get 10 times that much.
Open the throttle, Casey, and point me at Mr. Conklin's office.
Well, I finished straightening up your office, Daddy.
Thanks, Harriet. Run along, child.
Isn't there anything else I can do?
You can leave me alone. I'll get to your first class.
Daddy, you're irritated this morning.
Harriet, you're another Ellery Queen. It so happens that some vandal broke into my garden, trampled my flower beds, and stole a rare black orchid.
I didn't know that.
I just found out about it myself. I've been nursing that plant along for 7 years. I was planning to give that orchid to your dear mother. It's her birthday today, you know.
Yes, I know.
Now I'll probably have to buy a present for the old... It's a hard gift. If I ever get my hands on the scoundrel who'd... Enter.
Good morning, Mr. Conklin.
Oh, it's you.
Hi, Miss Brooks.
Hello, Harriet.
I was just leaving the office, Miss Brooks. Try and cheer Daddy up a bit, will you? He's rather low this morning. I'll see you at lunch, Daddy. Bye.
Goodbye.
Well, Mr. Conklin, isn't this a bright and cheerful morning?
Be brief, Miss Brooks. What brings you to my office?
I just came in to leave this little gift.
Gift?
Yes, sir. May I put it on your desk?
If you think you can do so without knocking the typewriter off on my foot again. What else?
Mr. Conklin, I should like your permission to borrow the Geiger counter from the chem lab.
Geiger counter?
I believe that's what it's called. It's used to indicate the presence of uranium.
Miss Brooks, are you planning to pelt me with an A-bomb?
Certainly not, Mr. Conklin. I couldn't even lift an A-bomb. But I've heard that there's quite a reward for discovering new uranium deposits, and I thought maybe
Kindly leave the premises.
But, Mr. Conklin,
I am in no mood to discuss this nonsensical project at this moment. I've had a most difficult morning. Nay, a shocking morning.
What happened, Mr. Conklin?
I don't know how versed you are in things botanical, Miss Brooks.
Oh, I'm pretty versed.
Several years ago, I purchased a rare plant. For the first few years, it failed to bloom. I tried everything. Finally, I ceased to rely on the hit-or-miss methods of plant propagation employed by a bunch of buzzing bees, and I pollinated that plant personally. Do you realize what that entailed?
Of course, you had to smear your feet with honey and jump from petal to petal.
No, Miss Brooks. But there are other back-breaking procedures which I pursued faithfully for 7 long years, until finally my efforts bore fruit.
You became the father of a lemon tree.
Wrong again. An orchid plant. A black orchid plant. Just yesterday, it started to bloom, and I said to myself, "You're a lucky man, Osgood. Tomorrow this lovely flower will blossom just in time for your wife Martha's birthday." And then do you know what happened this morning?
Yes. No.
Some vandal stole it.
Well, I guess I better be running along.
Miss Brooks, where are you taking that box? I thought you said it was a gift.
Oh, it is a gift, Mr. Conklin, but not for you. That is, not actually. It's for Mrs. Conklin. Her birthday, you know. Just a little remembrance.
Well, you can leave it here. I'll take it to her after school. I'd like to see what it is before I take it.
Oh, no, I'd rather you didn't see it, Mr. Conklin. That is, well, it's underwear.
That's all right. We share a dresser, you know. Now, put it down and get to your classroom.
But, Mr.
Dismiss! Oh, one thing before you go. If you should happen to hear any of the students, or faculty for that matter, discussing a black orchid, would you please make a confidential note of the party's name?
Confidential? I won't even read it to myself.
Our Miss Brooks, starring Eve Arden, will continue in just a moment, but first...
May 21st, 1950, Eve Arden, Our Miss Brooks on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. The news from 73 years ago today follows these messages from your favorite radio station. Just going to take a minute here to tell you about the big savings going on now, the clearance sale at mypillow.com. And you know, I've talked about how in my office, Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox on your favorite station. And they're really how comfortable. Does the television program The Rebel relate to MyPillow.com slippers? $25 Nick pair. Adams limit portrayed student Gary Nolan 3 or 4 more pairs. Unfortunately, they're out of my size. And they also have the father of that student clothing items was accused Miss Brooks of being incompetent. Go to MyPillow.com. She's working click on the clearance tab at the top of the page, neglecting his use son. My promo code Wyatt. Miss Brooks was hired 1-800 as a tutor for this young man played by Nick Adams from the TV show colors The Rebel. Other items. All right, Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. We're listening to Our Miss Brooks. This is originally broadcast Sunday, May 21st, 1950. Newspapers of that Sunday, some 73 years ago. These were some of the headlines. State Department charged last night Senator McCarthy had deliberately misquoted a congressional report to imply falsely that loyalty files were wide open to anyone in the department. Actually, access to the files is strictly limited, according to the department. It accused McCarthy of a crude misquotation in which he substituted the name of the department itself for the name of its security division. This was done in a Chicago speech May 6th. It was made public its second point-by-point analysis of an address by the Wisconsin Republican senator who has carried on a running attack against the department as a hotbed of communism. Military experts said yesterday America is widening her atomic weapons leadership and is developing defenses against the possibility of attack with deadly germs. Speaking in observance of the first Armed Forces Day, Paul H. Griffin, Assistant Secretary of Defense, said at Kansas City that officials are convinced that an earlier start and greater know-how is enabling the U.S. to widen its advantage in atomic energy. And from the little-publicized field of research in chemical warfare, the Army's chief of that division brought this measure of assurance in the event germ warfare should be launched by an enemy. We are prepared to deal with biological weapons. Defense measures now in effect or in preparation should prevent disastrous damage. 17 Russian fishing vessels, including a 2,900 two-ton transport, anchored off the south coast of Britain yesterday, near the area where Western naval forces are massing for spring maneuvers. Others of a fleet of some 30 small Soviet craft sighted Friday in the English Channel were reported steaming westward toward the Atlantic Ocean area where the maneuvers will be held. Robed Ku Klux Klansmen moved in at the church supper, and the good women of the Bloomingdale, Georgia Methodist Church moved out. The supper scheduled from 6 to 9 p.m. Friday night, but when between 150 and 175 Klansmen arrived about 7 p.m., the ladies left. One churchwoman said they didn't try to force us out or use any rough stuff. They just moved in, and we had to leave. A 22-year-old parrot's command of English paid off in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. Jocko said, "On fire! On fire!" Jocko couldn't see it, but he could smell it, and the terse alarm was enough to let Mrs. Ann Coe know her chimney was on fire. Firemen put it out with slight damage. Still talking about animal life, Tom Leonard in Shepperton, England, offered a $140 reward for the return of his poodle dog, who disappeared wearing his wife's ruby earrings. Leonard said, "My wife wasn't too keen on wearing them, but they looked fine on the dog." Those some of the day's top news stories as reported in the newspapers of Sunday, May 21st, 1950, on your radio are Miss Brooks starring Eve Arden, which continues following these messages. You're listening to Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox on a Sunday. Hope your weekend's been great. We're going to start up our new week of Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox with a science fiction story that will make you go, X-1, May 22nd, 1958, 68 years ago. Knock. The last man on Earth sat in a room. There was a knock on the door. That'll be on Monday's Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. But now, the conclusion of Our Miss Brooks starring Eve Arden, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time, the lead into Jack Benny, May 21st, 1950.
Well, my morning classes passed without any undue noise from the principal's office, so I assumed that Mr. Conklin hadn't found time to open the box containing his own black orchid, so thoughtfully provided for me by Walter Denton. When lunch period arrived, I hurried to the biology laboratory to let Mr. Boynton in on the ground floor of my predicament. Busy, Mr. Boynton?
Oh, not at all, Miss Brooks. Come on in.
Before we go to lunch, there's something I'd like to talk to you about. It's really silly, I guess, but I was rather embarrassed this morning.
Embarrassed?
It all started when Walter Denton came to pick me up and told me some ridiculous story about finding uranium on his shoes.
Oh, that isn't completely ridiculous, Miss Brooks. As a matter of fact, it was more or less confirmed in the chem lab by the reaction of the Geiger counter.
You mean that Walter did actually step into uranium?
Well, not necessarily. It could be some similar radioactive substance. You realize, of course, that the Geiger counter is an extremely sensitive instrument. It'll even pick up emanations from your radium dial wristwatch.
All the way from Fisher's pawn shop?
It's a wonderful invention. And while Walter's shoe may not necessarily indicate the presence of any large field nearby, it's still a rather provocative incident.
I'll say it is. Half of $10,000 is very provocative. If one were to discover some uranium, one would never miss the money it cost for a summer vacation, would one?
Well, I should think not.
I'm going to South America myself.
South America? Well, that's funny. I'm going to spend my vacation down there.
You too? What a coincidence. When are you leaving?
The day school ends, June 23rd.
You too? What boat are you taking?
The SS Brazil.
You too? What cabin will you be? Oh, no, I just meant that if we're going to be in Brazil at the same time, it ought to make it very pleasant for both of us. They say the nights down there are very conducive to romance.
Yes, I've heard something to that effect.
In fact, on most June nights in Brazil, the stars seem to be so low in the sky that you can reach out and touch each other.
Please, Miss Brooks, I don't like to change the subject, but...
Not much you don't. That's all right, Mr. Boynton. Brazil can wait. What is it you wanted to say?
Well, I'd like to show you just how the Geiger counter reacts. Mr. Keller has a tiny sample of uranium in the chem lab. It's usually under lock and key, though, and...
Hi, Miss Brooks. Mr. Boynton.
Oh, hello, Walter.
I just dropped by to take another look at the Geiger counter. Did you tell Mr. Boynton about the swell black orchid I gave you, Miss Brooks?
I was just about to. Walter gave me a fine black orchid this morning, Mr. Boynton.
A black orchid? Say, they're mighty rare. Must have been cultivated for about 7 years. Most likely in a hothouse.
This one is hotter than that. Walter, I don't usually give away presents, but I think you ought to know that in trying to get on Mr. Conklin's good side, I gave him the black orchid.
You gave Mr. Conklin the... I better get a glass of milk. I don't feel so good.
Just a minute, young man. Why did you steal that flower from Mr. Conklin's garden?
Well, it wasn't really stealing. I was only getting even. Every time Mr. Conklin passes our house, he strolls through the gate and gloms a rose for himself.
Well, rose glomming isn't orchid glomming. Besides, why did you have to make me the fence?
The fence?
receiver of stolen goods. I've been reading a lot of Chaucer lately.
I'm sorry about the whole thing, Miss Brooks. But tell me, what did Mr. Conklin say when he saw his own orchid?
Luckily for both of us, he hasn't opened the box yet.
Well, then maybe if someone could get into his office.
You too? That's just what I was thinking.
You too? I just saw Harriet in the hall. Of course, she doesn't know about what I did, but she told me your dad went shopping.
Then maybe we can remove the plant before he comes back.
Exactly. And I've got a scheme that'll make it impossible for old Marblehead, Mr. Conklin, to incriminate any of us. Are you with me?
What's the layout, Louie?
Well, I snipped the orchid off at the bottom. It's still got a long stem, see? Now, as soon as it gets dark, we can sneak back into his garden, stick the stem in the ground, and when he sees it tomorrow, he'll think something was wrong with his eyes this morning. And then when he snips it off, he won't know it has no roots.
Walter, you're a genius.
But Mr. Conklin's bound to find out it has no roots when another orchid fails to grow.
Maybe so, but in 7 years, we can cook up a dilly of an alibi.
I'll keep a watch here at the door, Miss Brooks.
All right, Mr. Boynton. Now hurry, Walter. We've got to get that box off Mr. Conklin's desk before he gets back.
Okay, Miss Brooks. There, I've got it.
He's coming down the hall.
We better get out of here.
It's too late. He'll see us. Quick, get rid of the box.
What box?
The one you're holding, Walter.
Oh, here, you hold this, Mr. Boynton.
All right. I don't want this. Here, Miss Brooks. Here's a nice orchid for you.
For me? How sweet of you, Miss. What am I saying? Here, you take this, Walter.
I'm allergic. Keep it.
Quick, Miss Brooks. Toss it out the window.
The window? Where is it? Oh, right here. Open, thank goodness. There you go.
Hello, what's everybody doing in my... Miss Brooks, may I inquire what it was you just threw out of my window?
Who, me?
That is your name, isn't it, Brooks? Or do you shot put under a nom de plume?
Well, I do remember tossing something out, but it was just a little bug.
A bug?
Yes, sir. That's just what it was, Mr. Conklin. A bug. We all saw it, didn't we, Mr. Boynton?
Oh, yes, it was a bug, Mr. Conklin.
In my office? What sort of a bug was it?
A beetle.
A boll weevil.
A louse.
The three of them were building a nest.
A nest?
Well, a hutch or whatever it is they live in.
Boll weevil live in cotton bolls.
You must get awfully tired of watching football games, don't you?
What's going on here? What are you three doing in my office?
Well, sir, we just came in to wish your wife a happy birthday.
You came in to wish my wife a happy birthday?
Yes, sir. Happy birthday to her. Happy birthday.
Oh, quiet!
Look, Mr. Conklin, I might as well tell the truth. I wanted to give Mrs. Conklin her present myself. That's why we entered your office, but then when I heard you coming, I became nervous and tossed it out the window.
Oh, well, that's easily remedied. We'll just reach out and pick it up. Now, but if there's nothing in it but underwear,
Please, not in front of Mr. Boynton. You see, that was a little fib, too, Mr. Conklin. It isn't underwear. It's something for the house. You see, I wanted you to be surprised, too.
That's right. That's what Miss Brooks told us.
Yes, sir. She wants you to be surprised, too.
Oh, well, that's different. Something for the house, eh? Mrs. Conklin's been talking about new curtains for the dinette. Could this be curtains?
It could be for us. Please, Mr. Conklin, if you'll just hand it over, I'll be eternally in your debt.
You are now. But if it pleases you to surprise us, then take it. But whatever you do, don't come over too early. I'm not going to give Mrs. Conklin my gift until after dinner.
Oh, that's perfect. You'll be good and busy inside. That is, goodbye now.
The cafeteria's about to close, Daddy. Aren't you going to have lunch?
I had a bite downtown, Harriet, when I bought your mother her birthday present.
Oh, what did you get her, Daddy?
A radium dial table model clock so she can see what time of night it is without waking me. I took it home before I returned to school. $15 I paid for that clock. She'd better like it.
I hope you hid it someplace where she won't find it in advance. You know how inquisitive Mother is about her presents.
I'm well aware of your mother's little idiosyncrasy, Harriet. I hid it all right. I buried it in the little sunken toolbox out in our garden. This is one present nobody could find without a Geiger counter.
Get off that driveway, Walter. Here's the gate to the backyard.
Now, show us about where you got the orchid, Walter, and I'll dig a little hole for it and put it back.
All right, you are, Mr. Boynton. It's over this way. Bring the box.
What's that box you're carrying, Walter?
This? Oh, this is the Geiger counter. I figured if we get away with this flower deal, we can get away with borrowing the counter for one evening.
Oh, great. Now I'm the co-owner of a hot Geiger counter. I wonder how Tehachapi is in the summertime.
Oh, don't worry, Miss Brooks. We'll be through with this job in a jiffy, and then we can do a little prospecting. Oh, stop right here, Mr. Boynton. I think this is pretty close to where I got the flower.
All right, Walter.
Please, Mr. Boynton, there's nothing to get so excited about.
That wasn't me.
No?
It's a Geiger counter. This is where I must have stepped. Miss Brooks, we're rich!
South America, take me away. Mr. Boynton, dig some more.
I'll put the counter over here now, so we keep quiet. We don't want to disturb anybody.
Wait a minute. I've uncovered some sort of a toolbox. What's this package in it?
Listen. It's ticking.
Ticking? It must be a time bomb.
A time bomb? But who would want to blow up Mr. Conklin?
Who wouldn't? I mean, if there's uranium around here, this bomb could have been planted by someone who didn't want any of us to get it.
That's right. Or it could have been placed by some crackpot who wants to see our civilization survive.
Listen, it's ticking louder.
Quick, give it to me. Here's a full watering can. This should stop it. There, it stopped.
You've done it, Miss Brooks.
Oh, you certainly have, Miss Brooks.
I don't know what it is she's done, but I'll bet I'm against it.
Mr. Conklin, oh, this is one time you won't be mad at us. Miss Brooks just stopped the ticking.
Oh, she certainly did, sir. She threw the whole box right into the watering can. You see, it isn't making a sound.
Indeed, it isn't. But then, after they're submerged in water for a while, very few $15 table model clocks are capable of making any sound!
$15 table clock?
Yes, Miss Brooks. Contained in this soggy, gift-wrapped box is my wife's birthday present. Well, is there any message you'd like to convey?
All together, gang. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Mrs. Conklin. Well, when we showed Mr. Conklin that his black orchid was still intact, and I promised to reimburse him for the ruined clock, he calmed down a bit and his complexion returned to its normal color, purple. After he had dismissed us, I slunk back to my room and fell into a nice, peaceful slumber. However, I awoke in the morning with a very disquieting thought. The fact remained that somewhere, somehow, Walter Denton had stepped in uranium. Mr. Keller, the chemistry teacher, had verified that. So when Walter arrived to pick me up, I hastened to reaffirm our partnership. We are still partners, aren't we, Walter?
Oh, you bet, Miss Brooks. Mr. Conklin didn't see the Geiger counter at all.
Good. Now, today, let's get a hold of a sample of uranium so we'll know what we're looking for.
And first, you'll have to give me $5, Miss Brooks.
$5?
We're partners, aren't we? You put in 5 and I'll put in 5. Mr. Keller just called to tell me that's what a sample costs.
Well, why should we have to buy it? Couldn't we borrow it?
Look, Miss Brooks, remember I told you how I got up on the table in school to fix the light bulb?
Yes, but what has that got to do with the uranium sample in the chem lab?
That's the uranium I stepped in.
What?
Sure. That's why we got to put in $5 each to buy the school a new sample.
Now I've got to go to South America, if only to send you a tsetse fly.
Next week, tune in to another Our Miss Brooks show brought to you by Luster Cream Shampoo for soft, glamorous, caressable hair and Colgate Dental Cream to clean your breath while you clean your teeth and help stop tooth decay. Our Miss Brooks, starring Eve Arden, is produced by Larry Burns, written by Al Lewis, Lester White, and Joe Quillen, with the music of Wilbur Hatch under the direction of Maurice Carlton. Mr. Boynton is played by Jeff Chandler, Mr. Conklin by Gail Gordon. Others in tonight's cast were Jane Morgan, Dick Crenna, and Gloria McMillan.
May 21st, 1950, 73 years ago, Our Miss Brooks, starring Eve Arden on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. I mentioned this yesterday. Several of your Buy Me a Coffee donations have gone toward us acquiring good remastered episodes of Gunsmoke. We'll be having more Gunsmoke shows coming up soon here on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. And a reminder, at classicradio.stream, you can stream our shows, learn about building a classic radio collection, contact me, find our social media links. You can also buy me a coffee. Buy Me a Coffee helps us acquire additional classic radio collections and also maintain our distribution channels. That's at classicradio.stream. Thanks for tuning in. Tell all your friends the greatest radio shows of all time are right here at this spot on the dial. Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox on your favorite station. Have a great week ahead.